Hello, good evening and welcome ladies and gentlemen to our season finale for the 2025 Season 4 iRacing Porsche Cup by CONSPIT, as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing, and proudly sponsored by none other than the sim racing hardware manufacturer CONSPIT. That's right ladies and gentlemen, after 11 incredible weeks of racing in our regular strength-fulfilled top split broadcast, brought to you every Wednesday in the 21:45 Greenwich Mean Time, that's GMT or Universal Coordinate Time slot UTC, we are here at our season finale. And we're better to bring things to a close than a little bit of the unusual, as we've made our way to the United Kingdom for the Snetterton circuit. However, unlike most visits to this circuit, which would see drives roar the way around the highly lengthy 300 layout, our drives instead are going to be taken to the 2-mile long 200 circuit. The outfield layout of the Snetterton circuit, ideally a tribute to the original layout of the Snetterton circuit, harking all the way back into the 1960s, where the circuit was based and originated, of course, on the old airfield from which it takes its name, the Royal Air Force Airfield of Snetterton. It is a circuit which marries together long straight, rather condensed corner sequences full of sweepers and hairpins, and through it all, plenty of overtaking opportunities on a rapid-fire racing lap. But where are my manners? Allow me to welcome you all to this live broadcast from Circuit Side as you tune in tonight on YouTube at youtube.com and search for TX11TX or Turty Paul Walsh, and you can be tuning in there and joining the likes of many, including none other there than Matthias Roger, who says hello, and we also say hello to Fabian Ming, or Fabian HD, who says Carl McGuinness is sick, and unfortunately won't be seeing Carl McGuinness on the grid, and that's a little bit heartbreaking. And we also say hello there to Max Andrews, who confirms the same, which is very unfortunate. And Carl, if you are tuning in right now, I hope you're feeling better soon, because we're definitely going to miss you today. And what an occasion to miss, because this is our final strength-fulfilled broadcast, or at least for now it is. There might be something to talk about a little bit later on at the end of today's broadcast, but it is going to be our final official strength-fulfilled broadcast that features the Porsche 992.1 GT3 Cup car. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, come the end of this final season week, the car is being retired from the iRacing service, and as the 2026 Season 1, it is being replaced by the 992.2 Cup car, with its all-new electronics package, much more powerful engine, and also aerodynamic refinements. This is really going to feel as though it is the ultimate send-off to the 992.1 generation GT3 Cup car, and we're all here for it. But in terms of our schedule for tonight, timed in Greenwich Mean Time, or Universal Coordinate Time, as we can see, we're going to be going racing in just over 2 minutes' time. It'll be 22 laps, fast and furious throughout, and by the end of it, we'll see our final winners of the Strength Fulfilled series. But as we come into this round, let's talk a little bit about our calendar and where we've been over the course of the season, because it is week 12 of 12, of course, and all the way back at the start of September, we made our way to Mexico for our first ever visit to the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, and we've made our way around the globe, from the likes of the Bend in Australia, all the way through to Road America and Mount Panorama, but we're here today in the United Kingdom for our one and only visit to the British Isle, and we'll be bringing the curtain down today. And goodness me, what a season it has been. We have seen some incredible battles throughout, and of course last time out at Sebring International Raceway in our second highest ever strength fulfilled broadcast, well, we got to see what was an incredible round of racing where Vitor Corrales took victory in the end ahead of Luis Glanier, with William Rasmussen, the pole man, making an early mistake which cost him the win, and in the end meant he had to settle for third. But the battles were absolutely furious throughout, with Glanier and Corrales running things all the way to the finish line, and hopefully we're going to see more of the same today. But playing host for tonight, it is the Snetterton 200 circuit, located near the village from which it takes its name in the county of Norfolk in England, the United Kingdom. A iRacing circuit map brings it to life very nicely, giving it a two-dimensional circuit with very little elevation change, minus at the bomb hole corner at turn number 6, and you can definitely see there that marrying of two sections of corners together via two long straights, the start-finish straight being at one end, and the Bentley straight, the back straight, being at the other end, and that is what our drivers will need to conquer. But as for our rules, because we can't go racing without them, and just to remind you, this is an open setup series where drivers bring a setup of their choice to each and every round of racing. As the race in itself, the grid shall be set via a closed qualifying session, which is about to come to a close, and will commence via a standing start when it comes to the race, as is the tradition of Porsche Cup racing, and drivers shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 17 or more instant points, and should they get to 25, they will be disqualified. But hopefully we don't see that, and we see plenty of brilliant races as we make our way back to the circuit, and we can see confirmation there that qualifying is going to end shortly due to inactivity, as all all the drivers have completed their qualifying laps. And as we do look to our two drivers just making the one around right now on cool-down laps, well, as we can see here, there's one of many a new name here today, including Daniel Diaz, who's on screen right now in the number 18. But it looks as though the highest rated driver, Philip Hammer, in this broadcast will be taking that pole position, barring any late surprises. And we bring up their ratings and licenses there very quickly. Your strength of field for this one is 3,495. Indeed, one of the lower strength of fields we've had. However, it's not to say that a lower strength of field is going to lead to a less qualitative race, and therefore we can expect some absolutely brilliant battling regardless of who's on this grid. And indeed, our drivers have demonstrated week in, week out that there's always going to be some brilliant battling. But with the field set, it is time for us to start to make our way to the grid. And indeed, right now we've got 23 drivers here, all making the adventure to the United Kingdom. But who is going to be the winner come the end of it all? And who's going to take the final bragging right of being the final strength of field broadcast winner in the Porsche 992.1 GT3 Cup car? Well, drivers like Thiago Pereira would love to be able to achieve that as he makes round in the number 15, but he'll be your lowest valid qualified time driver there, all the way down in 21st place, with Carlos Garcia Lastra Marquez and also Antonio Heinberg not setting any valid laps. They'll start from the very back of the field. But Philip Hammer has started off his day exactly how he wants to at that pole position, but only 300ths if that faster than Tobias Olsen, who'll be looking to keep him honest. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, the grid will be set very shortly, and when it is, we'll be seeing all the drivers go romping and roaring away around this circuit, and it definitely is going to be 22 laps that will be a little bit poignant, given the fact this will feel as though it's the closing of a huge chapter in Porsche Cup racing on the iRacing simulator. But of course, when one chapter closes, we will be starting a new novel when we come into 2026. And well, as we do see plenty more of you there in the YouTube chat, don't be shy, feel free to say hi, let us know how you're doing and what you're excited for tonight, who you're cheering on, of course. Well, ladies and gents, but without further ado, we take a brief breather, but we'll be heading to that grid shortly enough. And when we do, it's time for Green Flag Racing here at Snetterton. So as our drivers make their way onto the grid, this is how they'll line up for our final Strength of Field broadcast of the 2025 Season 4 campaign of the iRacing Porsche Cup by CONSPIT. It is Philip Hammer who returns to pole position for Week 12 for Pole Promotion Esports. 2.5 hundredths behind him, Ice Cold Racing powered by Maxim Race's Tobias Olsen. The Smiling Swede is then followed up by Gareth Higgins, who is only 300ths further behind for Team 75 Bernard by Sim RC. Then on row number 2 with him, it was none other than Michael Schultz-Kelderbach, with the Austrian Sim Racers driver being followed up by none other than Tim Bertie. Team RC was then joined on row number 3 by Elias Finoli for Ice Cold Racing powered by Maxim Racing, and then it is Lucio Tonello, the Argentinian, ahead of the Belgium driver, newcomer to the grid today, of Stephen Trickels. Then completing your top 10, it's Randolph Fredericks, ahead of none other than Fabian Ming, who we're very happy to see back on the grid once again for Pole Sim Racing. In 11th place, it is going to be a little bit further back down the order, none other than Jack Craft, in the company there of Rafael Bourgoin, with Lee Bowden and Adrian Korenziowski, rounded off your 7th row of the grid. On row number 8, it'll be Colton Ulstad and Jason Brandt together. And then on row number 9, we have Bartosz Klozwiecki ahead of none other than Frank Saltarelli. And from the Canadian driver to the Austrian, there of none other than Harold Sonnenberger, it was only 3 tenths, and it was a further 3 tenths there to Daniel Diaz, who completes your top 20. From the Colombian, on row number 11, it'll be the combination pair from Brazil of Thiago Pereira and Antonio Hernberg. And then last but not least on this grid, 23rd out of 23 starters, it'll be Carlos Garcia Lastra Marquez, who starts in the United Kingdom and has got all the work to do from the very back of the field. So the grid is set, all the drivers are in position, and for the final time this season, ladies and gentlemen, they all itch and scratch to get ready to go racing. Well, the lights go on. It's time for week number 12, Strength of Field race, and it's going to be 1 red light, 2 red lights, 3 red lights, 4 red lights, 5 red lights. And it's light turn, away we go here as they roar the way down towards turn number 1. 22 laps get away as quickly as that, and Philip Hammer immediately goes defensive down towards 1. Tobias Olsen looking around the outside here, elbows out there as Gareth Higgins tries to go round. He can't quite make him, he stays within reach as they make the way onwards, and a couple of drivers get a bit wide there. Everyone getting a little bit hasty into that braking zone, but as they make the way in towards turn number 2 now, the hairpin, this is where we're going to see some big battles. And well, we've got Stephen Trickels there looking to hold on, but he's been elbowed out there by Elias Finoli. Finoli goes for a good daring move, and onto the Bentley Bentley straight they go as Fabian Ming watches on a little bit further behind, but he's got to look to his left. He'll find Lucio Tonello fighting in with the Argentine driver. Had a brilliant start to his race and already making up some ground here as they come in towards Brundle into Nelson. But onto the brakes, these drivers come a bit further back there. We do see what's some movement from Thiago Pereira versus Frank Saltarelli, and Saltarelli there trying to use the Marlboro machine around the outside, but that's not going to be easy, and the two take each other off the road almost there. Well, they just about survive it as it's a big scramble towards the back of the field right now, and Bartos Kozlowski meanwhile tucks in behind and waits for his turn. Albeit he'll get an opportunity here as Saltarelli goes wide through the bomb hole, and that means Kozlowski now takes the place. But back to the front of the field after one lap. These laps are going to come thick and fast. Philip Hammer now leads ahead of Tobias Olsen. The gap is only 3/10. Then you have Gareth Higgins in third, followed by Tim Bertie. Then it's Michael Schultz-Kelderback. Then Elias Bernoulli, followed by Randall Fredericks, Stephen Tuchels. Then we have Lucio Tonello, Fabian Ming, and that's your top 10, with best of the rest of the 11 being Jack Craft. And Will Craft right now is on the move. He's looking a bit crafty out there, if you don't mind me saying. But me and Jason Brandt here in 15th place. He's had one place since the start, but he's looking for a few more, but he won't be getting places if Colton Olstad is able to get that close to him, coming down in towards the hairpin. Olstad staying behind for now in the default liveried Porsche 911 RCET, and as he makes his way onwards, well, you can see at Colton Olstad right now, well, he's definitely trying to put some pressure on here, but Harold Sonberger is also fancying his chances here as they get ready to go into Brundle into Nelson once again. A bit further up the road, Elias Vanoli. He's still holding off Stephen Trickels for now. Oh, it's looking a bit difficult as that is going to be Ming on the inside here. Tonello outbreaks himself in towards Nelson, but through the bomb hole they go, and Tonello holds on for now as we look back from the rear of your number 12 car here. He's lost 2 places since the start. He had a good qualifying session, but he's had a very slow start to this race, and therefore he needs to get things into first gear if he can. Otherwise, he may be spluttering and finding a box of neutrals. But as he comes out to the final corner, well, right now back onto the centre straight he comes, and you can see really pushing to the limit. But I don't think Tonello right now is in a comfortable spot. He does seem to be a little bit all over the road, and that might be a sign of a driver who's slightly rattled here. But to be fair, even the very best can be rattled, it has to be said. We've seen that time and time again this season, even from the likes of, say, Philip Hammett and Tobias Olsen, and Tonello is no stranger to that danger of not being in the right headspace. But as they come in towards turn number 2, you can see he's holding those lines as best he possibly can, and the reason is Fabian Ming is looking one way then the other. Ming's going to get a really good run here onto the Bentley straight as they do the switchback from the hairpin to the left-hand kick. Now Ming's got the overspeed here, but has he got the moves? Because of course it's going to be too wide into Brundle, and the problem's going to be he'll go from inside to outside to Nelson. Tonello opens up the corner naturally now, and well, it does look as though Ming's going to get this done. He gets ahead quite comfortably, and Tonello in the end does let it go. But back to the front of the field, your top 3 are all together here as they saunter their way round at pace, and right now it's Hammer, Olsen and Higgins. They've broken away by 1.3 seconds from Bertie. You can see Bertie there in the all-black car in the rear of the picture, and Bertie then does have Schutzer back ahead of Fredericks and Fernoli. So we have a top 7 split into 3 groups, or you could say 2 converging groups here, because Bertie's gradually falling backwards towards Schutzer back, and Fredericks and Fernoli are catching up. But as they all catch up to each other here, we could expect some great fighting towards the end of this race. And it does mean now Philip Hammer's in a bit of an intriguing position. As all goodness me, Tobias Olsen there drifted his way through turn number 1, and it just about keeps it together for Rich's Bend. But my good lord, Tobias Olsen fried himself through that corner. And well, in the end, right now, already trying to attack Philip Hammer as much as he possibly can. Have Gareth Higgins, we ride on board with your 3rd place man here. And right now, Higgins definitely has played the game of patience. Albeit we've got a lot of laps to go, so he's got quite some distance in this race remaining. But understandably, I get the feeling the number 3 driver here's really waiting to see what Olsen does versus Hammer. And I think he'd rather play that watch and wait game, as Olsen gets a good run here into bomb hole corner. He goes up the inside, Hammer doesn't fight it, but Higgins now sees the doors open. And I mean, at this point, he's going to go for it here all the way through Coram corner. And as they make the way around the very long right-hander that never seems to end, it gives way to a left-hander here. And who's going to stay ahead? It's going to be Hammer, just about holds his ground. But of course, Olsen now needs to get the Hammer down here and run away with this for the simple reason, if he can open up that gap, he might be able to run away with the lead. But behind you see Bertie closed up a little bit, but not as much as perhaps we'd have expected here. But I suspect that Bertie right now doesn't want to get into that dirty air too soon, as otherwise he might lose the front end of the car. They will all be running a lot of downforce in these cars, albeit some drivers may have tried to trim off a little bit of rear wing in order to give themselves better top end speed on the straights, of which we have those 2 very long straights, which are always a big factor. But understandably, there's going to be most of the downforce in these cars as possible, and that's going to give them the corner speeds, and that is what Higgins was relying on there to try and make the move happen. But Hammer in the end was able to counter-attack into the final corner and hold his ground, as you can see Higgins again trying to make an adventure of this, but not able to at the moment, as Randall Fredericks meanwhile, he's still over the the back of Schultz back, and he's still looking for that opportunity to move into 5th place as the number 4 driver, and Elias Finoli behind just waits and watches on. But further back, we look to Jason Brandt. And Brandt here enjoying a little bit of a fight with Klosvic as they come out through that straight and on towards the braking zones. But as they do, well, the number 8 driver here, he's definitely had a bit of a difficult day in the office, only qualifying in 16th place. And since then, things have not really gone forward. They've gone backwards, albeit it's not about how you start the race, it's about how they end it, they always say. But the problem is right now, if you're Jason Brandt, I think he would love to be making some progress sooner rather than later. But right now, he finds his progress really stumped here behind Klosvic, who is gradually pulling towards Diego Pereira. Pereira having started 21st, it's up into 16th, and is looking quite good, as is Antonio Heinberg, who started all the way back in 22nd. The 2 Brazilian drivers, they've made the most ground of many drivers here today, and that's a sign that the Brazilians may not have qualified well, but they're not going to let it hold them back when they go green flag racing. As Brandt right now, much better run there, coming for the opening corner, looks up the inside, goes all in here, it's going to be a smooth move, a bit of contact between the 2 of them, and I think there, Klosvic decided to turn in, thinking that Brandt was going to get stopped right on the apex, didn't quite work out. I think Jason Brandt had the right to the move there, and I think Klosvic just mistimed the cutback move, and as a result, Jason Brandt got it done, but not without some contact. So not the smoothest of moves, but sometimes it gets the job done. As further back, we can see Frank Saltarelli versus Sonberger. Sonberger looking to the inside, then tucks back into the racing line here, picks up the toe again. Flame spitting for the rear of that Porsche, and right now, no way through. Saltarelli here just keeping him behind, at least for a little bit longer. But as they make the way out in towards the Bob Hole corner, not named after the fact it's from an airfield, there's a completely different story to the reason why Bob Hole is known as Bob Hole. I can't repeat that story, unfortunately, live on air, ladies and gentlemen. It's a little bit sensitive. But meanwhile, as we come back to the very front of the field, well, it's going to be bombs away, or is it into the braking zone for turn number 2? Because Tobias also right now, he'll be looking at his rearview mirror, and 9 Hammer and Higgins are not going away. They've definitely had some fun, these drivers, but right now, it's serious faces once again. They're a third of the way to the race distance come the end of this lap, and they are looking at each other earnestly right now. I'm thinking, do we work together or do we fight each other? And I think Gareth Higgins has got the mantra, which is to try and go for both here. Do an offensive defence and go on a defensive offence. The idea is here, he wants to try and make sure that Bertie does not get close enough to get involved, but also he wants to keep Hammer honest and potentially goad the Pole Promotion esports driver into a small mistake. And at this level, these drivers, when they make mistakes, they are normally very minor, but they are big mistakes in the category of losing 1 or 2 places. We saw that, of course, for William Rasmussen last time out at Sebring, where a minor lockup midway through the race cost him the win of the race, and in the end saw him relegated to 3rd, and he didn't quite recover after that lockup. He did seem to be a bit deflated at that point, and it was Corrales versus Glanier all the way to the finish. The top 2 literally ran each other nose to tail from what was approximately 10 minutes into the race to the finish line. But meanwhile, we come back to Jack Craft versus Fabian Ming. Ming here trying to make up another bit of ground as they make the way in towards turn number 1. And right now, Craft is on the offensive. The number 11 driver here, looking around the outside, goes the switchback. Doesn't quite work out, but he makes his way now down into Wilson Hairpin, named after the late, great Justin Wilson. Well, somebody's got it very well. There's been a big lockup, and I think Schultz Kedelbach has had a big lockup to the point he's lost out versus Steven Treekels. We're going to need to take a look at that very shortly, but something's gone very wrong for him. Fabian Ming keeping ahead of Jack Craft for now, but definitely getting closer and closer, these guys, as they head down that back straight, and no move for now for Craft, but Fabian Ming definitely feeling the pressure as we take an opportunity to alleviate some pressure and take a look back at some of the big moments from the start of the race. Now, this was the start of the race. Elias Finoli, in particular, is the one of consideration here. Your top 3 went 3-wide into the opening corner, but what happened to your number 5 driver here as he came out? Well, he decided to take a bit of a rallycross approach to the exit of turn number 1, and as he brought himself back onto the circuit, we find himself under pressure from the 21 at Steven Treekels. However, Treekels was on the inside of the hairpin, but not on the inside of turn number 3, and that enabled Elias Finoli to come back ahead. We also did have this happen on lap number 2 for Daniel Diaz, and this was Diaz having a bit of a miserable run of Brundle into Nelson. Diaz being in the pink machine, the number 18 went on the brakes. The 23 tapped to the rear quarter. Oh, goodness me, that was a bit messy between them. That was between himself and Frank Saltarelli, and I explained why Saltarelli has been going a bit slowly due to the damage he's picked up since then. And well, we then look to what happened on lap number 3 for Steven Treekels. This is in towards the opening corner. Richards Bend always catches out a bit of an eager driver, and in the end he opts to carry a lot of speed, and in doing so, made his way all the way out to the grass. but thankfully was able to come back on immediately. And we just had this happen on lap number 8 for Michael Schulze-Kelderback. This was under braking in towards Wilson Hairpin in the number 7 car. At the time, he was running quite happily in position, but as he went onto the brakes, went all in, and the rear of the car let go. So it wasn't a lock up there, just a slide, and letting the 21 of Stephen Treakells on through. So that explains what happened, and we come back to your live racing. Now we come back to your live racing in good time because Tim Bertie has been caught up to by Randall Fredericks. Fredericks has made some spaces and therefore he's going to make up a place as he goes around the outside, and I think Bertie made a bit of an error through Coram Bend in towards what's the final quarter, and therefore it's opened up the opportunity for Randall Fredericks now to move another place. He's now 5 up from 9th and he's into 4th there. But right now Tim Bertie in the Matrix delivery machine, we didn't quite see that initially with all the code running down it, where he's going to see if he can hack into the mainframe here, albeit that mainframe proverbially is trying to hack into the performance of his car in order to get back into 4th. And he's got a lot of straight line speed here in the draft. Goodness me, that's very impressive here. They normally pick up a big toe, these Porsche Cup cars. However, not normally that quick. And that's a sign perhaps that Tim Bertie is running just a tiny bit less rear wing in order to gain straight line speed. And that's going to help him out if he can stay nice and close to Fredericks. But of course, this fighting between them means the top 3 moved out to 3 seconds away, and they continue to gradually waltz off into the distance, and it really is now changing the complexion of this race. Elias Fanoli still on the back of this as we jump on board with number 5 drives. He muscles the car out of the final bend, and as he does so, will right now definitely prove to be a very challenging corner. The Murray's Bend at turn number 8. But it does seem as though here Fanoli just staying nice and close, staying with arm's reach and making sure he doesn't make any errors. That's the important thing. And if you avoid the errors, then you can pick up the places a bit later on. As one of the big things we always consider here in the iRacing Porsche Cup by CONSPIT is that the tyres of these Porsche Cup cars normally last the best part of 15 to 20 minutes of the racing. These races are 25 minutes in length on average, so you do the mental mathematics in the fact that it does mean somewhere around what is 2/3 of the way to the final 5th of the race, the tyres are going to be worn down if they push them quite hard. So we are expecting that around lap number 17, if not a little bit earlier, perhaps at lap 15, we'll start to see some drivers potentially lose pace where others will gain it depending on how much time management they put into the works. But meanwhile, Elias Fanoli here just trying to manage this race and stay as close as he can. It doesn't seem to be offering him an opportunity, but one may come a bit later. Back to the front, Tobias Olsen, Philip Hammer and Gareth Higgins there, still together, albeit noticeably here. Olsen right now maintaining a bit more of an advantage than perhaps his rivals would expect, holding a gap of half a second as they make the way onwards. He definitely does seem to be in a bit of a happy place here. However, will that happy place stay there for long? Looking a bit further down the order to Michael Schulze-Kelderback. Well, here he goes, chasing after Treakells, the driver he lost out to after his late spin at turn number 2. And coming in towards Richards Bend this time. Well, I think Kelderback is so close here that if he was any closer, he'd be touching the rear wing of his rivals. We ride on board, nasty chip in the windscreen, and into the braking zone he comes here for Wilson, previously known as Montreal Corner. And no way through here, but he keeps putting that pressure on. He's really trying to build that pressure, but right now Treakells is not wilted to it. But from then we come back to Fabian Ming running in 10th. As we do say hello in the YouTube chat there to Jed Steamed Hems, and I hope you're doing well, Jed. And indeed, so William catching strays there. I do believe in reference to what happened to William Rasmussen last time out. I mean, well, Fabian Ming here, he's trying to catch up some places of his own. He lost out versus Lucio Tonello a bit earlier on. Tonello, the Argentine driver, who's definitely had one of those races where he's got to get himself back in the rhythm still. Having started in 7th, but he's fallen to 9th. And in front of him, he's got this battle that's starting to brew up, and therefore he may be able to get a bit more involved in it. With Schulze-Kelderback at the moment close, but Treakells here makes his way out to Murray's Bend, and well, if there was ever an opportunity, this is the one for Schulze-Kelderback, who's got an absolutely brilliant run out the final corner. He's got the draft as well, and he doesn't need an invitation here as they head into turn number 1. Through Richards Bend they go, the double right apex. It's going to be Schulze-Kelderback on the inside. Treakells tries to hang around the outside. It's not going to work, but he will have the short toe in towards turn number 2, but he's not going to dare to dream to go for it here, and the places will change. But Tonello and Ming are right on the back of this now, so suddenly we have a 4-way fight for 7th place for it. 7th for 10th for all within 1.5 seconds of each other, and Fabian Ming literally has the world in his hands if he wants to try and gain these places and get himself all the way up from his starting position into a third position inside that top 10 come the end of it. A bit further back we see Jack Craft, Raphael Bourgoin and Lee Bowden getting together, and Bowden in particular, who definitely had a bit of a quiet start to this race. He's now suddenly announced himself on the scene at number 14 as we see him here in the Unibet machine, and coming on through there, avoiding the curbs, doing a very good job at doing so. You don't want to hit the raised apex curb there at Nelson in particular, as otherwise you'll be two-wheeling for a while. You'll suddenly turn your car into a motorbike, and well, unfortunately the problem will be the car will be at a very major angle in terms of how it's slanted, and that's going to make it very hard for you to get it back together. And it's not a surprise, we do occasionally see a car roll through some of these very sharp corners. The same there at Murray's Bend, where you have that very high apex curb. As he makes way down the back stretch and then on towards the front stretch. Right now, Lee Bowden definitely has got the bit between his teeth versus Bourgogne, but will he let Jack Craft break away as a result of that fighting? That is going to be the question that's hanging over him right now. Can he find a way past Bourgogne without losing time? He thinks about it into turn number 2. It's not going to come forward. I think his patience will gradually run out. As, oh, goodness me, that's not where you want to park the car. That is on the exit of Murray's Bend. That is Harold Sundberger, who's had a bit of a spin. How did he end up there? Here's a quick replay. So this was Sundberger at the time running happily in 18th place. He hasn't lost any place. He's just lost time as a result of this. Went through the corner, took the apex curve, launched himself into the air, and the car came crashing down. And at that point, he was at the mercy of which way the suspension wanted to rock. And well, unfortunately for Sundberger, proving the point, which is you don't want to hit those apex curbs. But the good news is he's still back in the racing, albeit of a slightly wounded car. He'll be looking to manage that as best he possibly can. We'll come back to your race leader, and as we do, onto a 15th lap they go of the Snetterton 200 circuit, and they're adding up the miles very quickly. A grand total of 44 miles of racing here. Right now, Tobias Olsen at Philip Hammer and Gareth Higgins could not be closest. Higgins now starting to bear his fangs once again. He's had a bit of a breather, but noticeably at Randolph Fredericks, who has broken away from a nice Finale in Tim Bertie, he's now trying to see if he can catch up to him. He's matching the lap times of the leaders, but the leaders do have the opportunity of slipstream here to pull themselves a bit further away. But Higgins looking for the move. That's going to be outside to inside here through Brother Winter Nelson. Higgins is going to go for it. It's very close. They squeeze each other, but they give each other enough racing room to cooperate. In towards Bob Hole corner they go. It's going to be Hammer around the outside, but I don't think he's going to have enough racing room to work this out here. I think he just runs out of real estate. And we jump aboard with Philip Hammer, who finds himself in the middle of the road at Coram. Therefore, he was going to go for the cutback late on through the corner, but the problem is, by the time he gets it positioned now, coming through Murray's Bend, it's not going to work. But what he can do here, oh, goodness me, Hammer sliding loose coming through Murray's Bend. I think that was him trying to get the throttle down way too soon, and Hammer there so eager to attack finds Higgins breaking away as they make the way past us here in the concentrate booth, and in towards turn number 1 right now. Gareth Higgins is into second, but Tobias Olsen is 1.5 seconds clear. Can Olsen make the break now, or will Higgins be able to reel him in? They have got the best part of 7 laps, including this one, to decide it. Higgins goes deep. Higgins makes a mistake, and I think Olsen's going to be given all the room he needs right now unless he makes a mistake of his own. Hammer in the end stays right behind, but he's not able to find a way forward, and that does mean now that it's going to be the battle for second that takes precedence over the battle for the lead. But we've unfortunately in the interim had an instant for Jack Craft that's dropped him out of the running order. He's going to drop all the way down. I think he's had to tow to the pits, ladies and gents. We'll get a replay of that when we can. McCraft's had a nightmare moment, and suddenly, the battle between Raphael Bourgogne and Lee Bowden and Jack Craft is minus a Craft, and therefore Bourgogne and Bowden now fight over 11th place instead, with Bowden falling backwards a little bit, as Craft is definitely in the pits right now, and the car is being worked on, and we do have a quick replay to explain. So this was Jack Craft in towards turn number 1, went to Rich's Bend. What exactly went wrong? Made his way through the corner. Oh, my goodness. That's a nasty knock there. And, well, before he went to the barrier, he towed the car to the pits 9. The car was going to be in pieces. Craft, in the end, hitting the second apex curb way too tight. And in the end, the car ricocheting off the curb, as it would do, given the fact that off of the apex curb, what essentially there is there's a significant drop off the curb and a patch of grass. And the idea is the front right tyre has dipped onto that grass, and then suddenly it hit the curb, and that's what's launched the car, and it's bounced around. And I get the feeling no matter how well he crafted the bump stops of the suspension, the car was always going to ricochet like that. And in the end, Jack Craft doing the only one thing he could do, which was either tow it to the pits or see it end up in pieces and then tow it. And well, he wasn't going to waste any time of having his Porsche fall into pieces, I can assure you of that. But as we come back to your live racing, Lee Bowden then right now try to chase down the best of the rest accolade, as Adrian Korinzowski, well, right now in the number 13, has gradually gapped Antonio Hindenburg, but he's in 13th and is trying to close down Bowden and Bourgogne. He is faster than them, but only by a tenth. So therefore, it does seem to be a bit of a situation here where he may not have enough time to be able to close the gap unless they make mistakes of their own doing. A bit further back, Harold Sundberger and Frank Saltarelli, they're still together. They're both chasing after Bartosz Kolozesk, and as they come in towards the hairpin, right now these three drivers, they've been practically locked together throughout the entirety of the race, albeit that's not to discredit them, that's to their credit, because they definitely put on a good little show towards the very back of the field as they fight over 17th place, and Daniel Diaz is only 2.5 seconds behind after his altercation with Saltarelli at Brundle into Nelson early on in the race. Well, Diaz is still catching back up to them and may be able to get involved right towards the end. Unfortunately, Colton Olstad has dropped a lap down from the leaders. And, well, in terms of where Olstad is, here he is. And, in fact, he makes his way around here right now. He's finding himself falling further and further back, as I believe he's currently behind your 13th place runner on the road of Adrian Korzalski. However, he is a lap down. Jack Craft, by the way, good news, he's leaving the pit lane. He will be finishing this race at least a lap down, if not several laps down at this point. But they've got the car repaired, which is great to see, and the number 11 is going back out there. So therefore, he will be finishing this season finale race. As meanwhile, we come back to the front of the field, and we already have 4 more laps to go here at Snetterton. And Tobias also right now is still your leader, but the gap is coming down because Gareth Higgins, on the previous lap, it was 108.21, the fastest lap of the race so far. And on that one, Olsen and 108.48, Higgins a 108.16, 3/10 faster, a new fastest lap, and Philip Hammer is almost matching Higgins here, so we could see this top 3 gradually come together right on the final lap. That's what we're hoping for. Of course, Tobias Olsen's not hoping for that. You can understand. If you're a big fan of the Ice Cold Racing powered by Max Sim Racing team, you want Olsen to break away. But for entertainment purposes, it'd be absolutely incredible to see what Higgins can do versus Olsen. But these 3 drivers, they have raced each other on several occasions this season. They have produced some of the finest racing at the very front of the field. And right now, Tobias Olsen, credit where it's due, is doing an incredible job of leading this race. But the problem is, if he can't maintain the gap, the tow gets stronger lap after lap for Gareth Higgins. And that's why he's really coming on strong as they come through Coram and in towards Murray's Bend. Further back, Pole Sim Racing's Fabian Ming, he's on a mission here, still chasing after Lucio Tonello. And Tonello right now is not budging as these two push each other. But you can definitely see that Ming is continuing to be on a charge, as Max Andrews says in the YouTube chat. And well, he's looking for that 8th place. He wants one more place before this is all said and done. He started in 10th place. He wants to finish 8th. He wants to gain a couple more. As new fastest lap of the race, Gareth Higgins a 108.13 to Olsen's 108.8. So therefore, we've got a lead battle that is going to come, albeit it's not on screen at the moment, as they make the way on to 3 laps on the finish. 20 out of 22 laps now in our grasp, and the battling is starting to come down further down the field, but at the very front, at the very precipice, this is where all the excitement is building up to. As we ride on board here from Olsen, making his way into Brundle into Nelson once again. A very tricky sequence of corners to get right once, let alone 22 times when you're under absolutely huge pressure here. And right now, Olsen is showing it again and again. Bottom hole corner, not really a viable place to overtake or look for a move for Higgins so far. He's got to be a lot closer, and really is all predicated off of a good run coming out of Nelson. But Murray's Bend here, if a small mistake occurs coming from Coram into Murray's, then suddenly the driver behind will be able to seize. And as Olsen then runs all the way out the road, just slipping wide. Well, I think that will be track legal that time. He's right on the limit here is Tobias Olsen, but you can understand why, because Higgins, when he's this close, he's got a long straight. Well, right now he wants to be within 3, if not 2 attempts on the run of the straight to be able to look for an opportunity to reach his bend. So Olsen is having to use all the track just to make sure he stays enough ahead not to be at risk of a slipstream assisted move. But as they make the way through Wilson Hairpin, that natural concertina effect brings Higgins closer and closer, but these drivers continuing to work each other the distance. And as they make the way down the backstretch, 2 attempts this time on the exit of turn number 3. Higgins is looking good, but there's a bit of traffic ahead. Can he look for the move here before they get towards Brundle? No is the answer, and in front of them is none other than Frank Saltarelli, who they'll be hoping sees the blue flag and is willing to give way immediately or soon, because otherwise it could bring Philip Hammer right into this fight as well, as Hammer falls to 8 attempts back here. They've got one more lap after this one, and it's going to be a real dividing lap all the way to the very end. They make the way through Coram Bend, and right now Saltarelli not worrying about stepping aside right now. I think he's doing the right thing. He'll do it on the start-finish straight here as they exit the final corner. And here they come then, ladies and gentlemen. One more lap between them and the final checker flag of the season. It is Tobias Olsen who leads, but Gareth Higgins is 3 tenths behind. And then you've got Philip Hammer a further 6 tenths adrift here as they head into turn number 1. Olsen has been leading for so long right now. I think he won't want to budge, but Gareth Higgins will have other ideas as they roar the way from Riches into Wilson. Higgins 2 tenths. Again, looking up the inside. He goes for the move. There's contact between the two of them. It turns Olsen sideways. Hammer comes into the scene of the instant, but he can't do anything. And Gareth Higgins takes the lead of the race. Oh, but my goodness, not the way you want to do it. And as Olsen now has to worry about Philip Hammer looking for the move, well, Higgins is going to carry on. I think he decided he had to go for it there. there, and he had to send it, but was it too much of a send? You let us know in the YouTube chat, ladies and gentlemen. Meanwhile, Hammer right now tries to come back for second place. He's going to go around the outside here at Nelson. It's going to be brave. It's going to be bold. There's elbows out. They make contact. Hammer in the end with oversteer. They're coming out the corner. Makes contact. Olsen gives the place back immediately. Tobias Olsen will hold on to second for now, but as they make the way around through Coram Bend, it's 2 seconds to this man. And I don't think he's going any other way at this point, for as Gareth Higgins comes out the final corner, well, there might be debate over the move, but he's made it stick. And for Gareth Higgins, he will be your season finale winner here at Snetterton, ahead of Tobias Olsen, who takes second, Philip Hammer takes third, Randolph Fredericks takes fourth place, and then it'll be Elias Finoli in fifth in the end, ahead of Tim Bertie. We will then have none other than Michael Schutzer-Kelderback heading home to a rather tough seventh place, ahead of Lucio Tonello, who I can see the S7 Aeros cheering on. Fabian Ming takes ninth ahead of Stephen Treekels, and Treekels will make his way towards the timeline in 10th place ahead of Rafael Bourgoin, who is best of the rest. He'll then be Lee Bowden in 12th ahead of Adrian Korenzowski, and then we will have a chase for 14th place right to the end. It's going to be our two Brazilian drivers who battle for it, but it'll be Antonio Hernenberg ahead of Thiago Pereira, and they round off your top 15. A bit more time before we do get to Jason Brandt, who comes on home in 16th place here, albeit he's been very resilient in the number 8 car to do so, ahead of Bartosz Koziersk. And then we do have none other than Harold Sonberger, who is going to come home in 18th place, just behind Koziersk, who is ahead of him there in the yellow machine. And they finish their respective races, and then Daniel Diaz will be your last lead lap finisher there in 19th. But of course, many of you will want to take a look back at what exactly happened between Tobias Olsen and Gareth Higgins, and we can oblige, ladies and gentlemen, and here's the replay of that battle for the lead on the final lap. So as you can see, all three drivers made the way down the start-finish straight, and it was Higgins chasing hard versus Olsen. But as they headed into Rich's Bend, we jump aboard here with Higgins, who looked to the move. Well, through Rich's, a good run here, but was he close enough? He saw the opportunity. Olsen did defend it too hard, and Higgins went to win. And well, Olsen came across there, and oh, goodness me. Personal opinion here, I would say that Higgins went for an opportunity that perhaps was never really on. He would have his own opinion, and everyone's going to have their own opinion there. But something tells me I think Tobias Olsen may be headed down to Gareth Higgins' paddock garage after that, and be having a polite word with him with regards to that contact. So I get the feeling Higgins wanted it, but unfortunately, in the end, went for a move that perhaps wasn't quite there, although he would argue Olsen perhaps should have covered it off a bit more. But in the end, Tobias Olsen had to fend off Philip Hammer, and what then followed was a bit of a battle, as we do say hello there to Higgsy549 in the YouTube chat. I think that is Gareth Higgins, who says, I'm kind of ashamed for that move, and to be fair, Gareth, if you are, absolutely fair to you, and great to see you owning up to it in the YouTube chat. Again, we're not going to portion blame, we're just giving our opinion as a commentator, but you can see the battle that it did result in between Tobias Olsen and Philip Hammer. They came to blows, albeit I think it was Hammer on the outside there, ended up with a bit of power oversteer, and it came completely loose, and Olsen in the end being able to survive. But goodness me, what an end, ladies and gents. They all threw it in. And, well, of course, we always do ask that if you do have anything that's up for debate in the YouTube chat, do keep it civil. Because remember, opinions are opinions. And at the end of the day, whilst we're all rivals on the circuit, we're all friends off the circuit. Or that's what we aim to be. But that concludes the race, ladies and gentlemen. But with that, let's take a breather and take a look back at those race results, subject to any stewards' inquiries. And here they are. So after 22 laps of intense and fast and furious racing in Week 12's Strength of Field broadcast of the 2025 Season 4 iRacing Porsche Cup by CONSPIT, Gareth Higgins, your winner for Team 75, Bernard by Sim RC by 2 seconds in the end over Tobias Olsen for Ice Cold Racing powered by Maxim Racing. And well, in the end, a brilliant three-way fight between the top three, and Philip Hammer completed the podium there for Pole Promotion Esports. It may have ended on a little bit of a cloudy note, but let's not take away from the fact for Higgins, Olsen and Hammer, they delivered an absolute spectacle from lights out to checker flag. Randolph Fredericks took fourth place in the end. He was really the best of the rest of the field and was 2 seconds ahead of none other than Elias Finoli, as we do say hello to a few more of you in there, including none other than Happy Gritty, and also there to Matthew Swatton, real life racer by the way, in the Junior Saloon Car Championship. And we also say hello to Overmac, who's enjoyed himself. A good evening to you all, guys. Hope you're all doing well. But carrying to run down the finishing order here, from Elias Finoli in 5th place there for the Ice Cold Racing powered by Maxim Racing team. He was 2 seconds ahead of Tim Bertie, the Tim RC driver there. Ended up falling down the order a little bit after starting in what was 5th place. He made his his way to 4th, but had to settle for 6th. We then did have in 7th place Michael Schutzer-Kedelbach for Austrian Sim Racers, ahead of Lucio Tonello in 8th for the Privateer, and then Fabian Ming in 9th for Pole Sim Racing. In the end, fought his way up the order, but he couldn't quite find his way past the Argentine, but he was able to finish ahead of Stephen Chiquels. The Privateer completed your top 10, and then it was Rafael Burgoyne in 11th, who was best of the rest, ahead of Lee Bowden, with Adrian Korinzowski ahead of the Brazilian pair of Antonio Heineberg and Thiago Pereira. Both drivers doing a brilliant job, starting from the very back of the field to make the way into 14th and 15th. Round of applause for them. And in 16th, it was Jason Brandt, who fell down the order early on, but fought his way back to 16th, ahead of Bartosz Koziesk, and the Polish driver then being followed up by the Austrian of Harold Sonberger, with Daniel Diaz and Frank Saltarelli round off your top 20. Saltarelli in the end was a lap down at the close, and indeed adding to that was a lap down for Colton Olstad and Jack Kraft, and we unfortunately had a non-start for Carlos Garcia Lastra Marquez, who in the end was 23rd as classified, but will be a non-starter. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, a huge round of applause, of course, to all 23 of our drivers who made the race today. Very pleased to see them all out there. And, of course, a huge congratulations to our top 3 of Gareth Higgins, Tobias Olsen and Philip Hammer. But with that, as the circuit falls silent, well, don't go anywhere quite yet, because we're going to cut to a word briefly about our title sponsor, CONSPIT, and when we come back, we've got a bit of a question for you guys and girls. Stay with us for just 1 minute, and we'll ask that question, and we'd love to hear your thoughts. If you are looking to take your sim racing to the next level, then why not consider CONSPIT? As the pro driver's choice of sim racing hardware, CONSPIT offers one of the most comprehensive lines of hardware products to sim racers around the world. Whether you're in the market for wheelbases, steering wheels, pedals, peripherals, or rigs, CONSPIT's extensive experience in the motorsport industry means every one of their products is fine-tuned for success at the highest level. But do not just take our word for it. We're brand ambassadors including 2022 Grand Prix Macau GT Cup champion Luo Kaliu, 2022 Porsche Carrera Cup Asia champion Liu Ye, 2022 Chinese Touring Car Championship champion Rodolfo Avila, and 2023 GT World Challenge Asia GT3 AM Cup champions Climax Racing. You shall be in pole position for victory when you invest in CONSPIT's hardware. If you'd like to know more, be sure to head to conspit.com today. So, ladies and gentlemen, that brings this broadcast to a close, and we'll definitely catch you in 2026 for plenty more racing action, starting with Season 1 in the all-new Porsche 992.2 GT3 Cup car. However, the question I want to ask you is this. We've still got a week of Snetterton to go. We still have, technically, plenty more splits to go. Would anybody be interested in a live broadcast of the final ever top split in the Porsche 992.1 Cup car? So next Monday, whenever that final top split is, if you're interested in seeing a final broadcast of the car, let's give it an even bigger send-off at Snetterton. If we can make that broadcast happen, we definitely will. Because, of course, we've had this today. It'll be in a regular broadcast. It won't be our regular straight for field. It'll be whoever turns up, we do it, and we send the Porsche off with one final hurrah. If you're up for it, do let us know in the YouTube chat, because we will make it happen. But if we can definitely make it happen, we'll be there. And on top of that as well, we will be back for an all-new season of Top Split Straight for Field racing in the Porsche 992.2 GT3 Cup car. And of course, that will start in 2026 with Season 1. The specific dates and the split that we'll be doing it on, we will be announcing in the official iRacing Porsche Cup Discord as soon as we can. We're still working out the logistics about it, but rest assured, ladies and gentlemen, there will be a broadcast when we do switch to the new 992.2 Cup car, and if we can make that broadcast happen next Monday to send off the 992.1 Cup car, we will be there, and keep your eyes peeled, because we will be announcing it in the official iRacing Porsche Cup Discord as soon as we possibly can. So we will see you next week on Monday, hopefully, and we'll keep you posted on that. But otherwise, if you've been enjoying this all season long, we'll be back in the 2026 Season 1 campaign in the new Cup car as well. We wanted to throw that out there because you've all been stars, whether you've been on the grid for one round or the whole set of rounds. Alternatively, you've just been tuning in, and we couldn't have done this without you. But with that, we do need to wrap up. So, for now at least, congratulations to everyone who's competed this season. They've been absolutely incredible from start to finish. Well done to you all for tuning in, week out. You've all made this absolutely brilliant. We will catch you next time. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling. I've been your commentator, Paul Walsh. And most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.